Hey everybody, it's Brenda. I know it's been an awfully long time since I've done a video, but I believe I've put in my blog or my posts on Facebook that my chemo has been a little rough. This is the one time I wish I didn't have to do this chemo. This is probably the worst chemo out of all of them that I've done. But according to my doctor, I just need to push through, so that's what we're gonna do. A lot of people ask me why, when I go somewhere, why I have to bring so many bags and backpacks with me. Well, I'm gonna go over just one of those backpacks today and show everybody what's in it and what it does and why I need it. So this is just a partial glimpse into what I bring with me. I'll be doing other videos on the other things that need to go with this when I go somewhere. So let's get started. This is what I call my feed bag. Anytime I tell Hannah or Jay that I need my feed bag, this is what they get and bring. And feeding tubes require a lot of supplies, so I have everything in here should anything go wrong. So let's get started. We'll start up in the top pocket. Tape. Everybody needs tape. I'm allergic to most tapes and adhesives, so this is paper tape. It's the one that works the best with me. Then I have, this is kind of funny, these are actually pacifier clips. But a lot of people use them to hold your feeding tube. Kind of like I have right here. I have it hooked on my shoulder. The feeding tube, I have two feeding tubes, a G tube and a J tube. And the extension sets tend to get a little heavy. So if you clip this on, it tends to hold them up so that not all the weight is on the hole that goes through you into your stomach. It tends to get a little sore if you have the feeding tube extensions pulling. So I use these to clip up my feeding tubes. Next we have these are called tender grips, and it's just a little round piece that you can run a line through and then another piece goes over the top. And this actually holds your feeding tube in place. You can stick them on your stomach. When I had an NG tube in my nose, these secure them to your face so it doesn't pull out. So those are very helpful. This is what's called Mepitac tape, and this also helps to secure. You use this, it's skin colored. You use this along with the tender grips to be able to secure your feeding tube. Okay, let's go into another pocket. Next, I have my G-pads. I absolutely love these. I've had a few people make them for me. Jay's aunt has actually made quite a few of them for me, and I absolutely love them. They're super soft and fuzzy, and they fit around my feeding tube. All feeding tubes, when they make a hole from the outside into your stomach, they all tend to leak a little bit around the hole. So you use these to put around your feeding tube on the outside. You unsnap it and then re-snap it. And some feeding tubes leak a lot, some don't leak very much. But one of the requirements for having a feeding tube is to keep it absolutely dry at all times. Otherwise, you're bound to get an infection. So sometimes you can change these out up to 10 times a day. But so far my feeding tube has not been too bad. The hole that goes from the outside into the inside of my stomach is called a stoma. And so far my stoma does not leak that bad. So that's a good thing. But I have tons of wonderful patterns, and they're all very soft and fuzzy on the other side, so it doesn't irritate my skin. But I've always got extra of these to go everywhere we go. I have a laundry garment bag, and I use this to put the dirty G-pads in, so they don't get mixed up with the clean ones. And then this just throws in the washer, and they get all cleaned. I tend to be a little OCD. When they come out of the dryer, they're a little scrunched up, and I actually sit and iron them to make them straight and fluffy again. So that's just me being picky. Next, I have a foldable cup, and this is so that if all of a sudden I need to stop my feed, maybe I'm too nauseous, or maybe I need to stop it to put something else through my J-tube. I run my feeds through my J-tube. I normally put medicines through my G-tube, but I can put distilled or sterile water in here so that I can use a syringe and flush my tube. They're supposed to be flushed every 4 hours. So this is very helpful. Next is one thing that I can't forget everywhere I go: hand sanitizer. Always got to have clean hands before you do everything. Feeding tubes are not a sterile, what's the word? Feeding tubes are not a sterile procedure. So really all you need to do is wash your hands or use some hand sanitizer. If your hands are really dirty, of course you're going to wash them first. But it's not a sterile procedure to do anything with your feeding tube, even if you're changing your extension sets, because your stomach is kind of like the trash can of your body, so it can handle an awful lot. Next, I have a little zipper pocket, and in my zipper pocket I have an NG tube. And this is the tube that I had down my nose and into my stomach. And I have been trained on how to put these in. So if for some reason my J-tube stops working and or it's plugged or something and I can't get into the doctor for a couple days, I need to be able to put one of these down right away so that I can still do my medicines and still get my feed, because probably about 95% of my nutrition comes from my feeding tube. I eat very little by mouth. I don't even eat enough to be a kid's meal if you go to a restaurant. So a feeding tube is a requirement for me to be able to maintain my weight and be healthy. So if my feeding tube stops working, I put down an NG tube. This is one of the little tubey pockets, and it goes with the feeding tube, the NG tube that goes down your nose. One end goes down into your stomach, the other end kind of hangs. I used to tuck mine behind my ear, but the end you stick in this little pocket so it doesn't get dirty or anything like that, so it just helps keep it clean. These are extension sets, and since I have 2 feeding tubes, I use 2 of them at a time. They just hook on to my actual, what's called a Mickey button, and I change these out once a week. but every once in a while I'll get a clog in my feeding tube and we can't get it cleared. I'll change these out to see if that helps. My immune system with this chemo has been extremely low. As a matter of fact, right now I'm kind of on house arrest. My actual white blood cell count right now is only like 1.6. So going into stores or going out and about is a big no-no for me because I could pick up anything. And unfortunately it's flu season right now, so I've got to stay inside. But when I do get to go out, these are extra masks in case I forget to grab one on my way out the door. I've got some so that I can go into the stores and be able to get out of the house once in a while. Let's see, now I will go in this bottom pocket. And in here, I have a little tiny bottle of dish soap and a trash bag. I keep extra dish soap so that I can, if I'm somewhere, I can rinse the formula out of or the medicine out of my blender bottles or anything like that. That way when I get them home, I can throw them in the dishwasher, but this just helps get all the junk out of it. This is what's called a slip tip syringe, and what this does is there is 3 ports on my Mickey button that comes out of my stomach. One is for the G tube to hook on, one is for the J tube extension set to hook on, and one is a port for the balloon that's inside of me. So if this were the outside of my stomach and we put the feeding tube in, once it's all the way into my stomach, a balloon blows up on the inside so that you can't pull it back out. So this syringe hooks onto that 3rd port. A lot of times the water will dissolve on the inside and the balloon is not as full. The feeding tube can actually pull out, which is very bad. Because the stoma can close up very quickly. But this is to check the water once a week. You simply hook up to the port on the Mickey button, pull back, see if it has enough water. If it doesn't have enough water, you get more distilled water and push it back in and blow up the balloon again. But you have to be very careful not to pull your feeding tube out too far when you're doing that. Next, I have a little tiny container of distilled water, and this is actually very clean, sterile water. And in case the fluid in my feeding tube in the balloon is too low, I'm able to fill it up right away so that my Mickey button for my feeding tube doesn't pull out all the way. This is hydrogen peroxide and some first aid antibiotic cream. I use both of these to keep the area around my Mickey button clean. There's something what's called granulation tissue that can build up. It almost looks like a raw blister or some raw skin that builds up around there. And that happens if you don't keep it dry. It's very painful. But if you constantly keep your feeding tube clean and dry, then you don't have those issues as much. Next, I have just some 2x2 sterile gauze, and I have an IV sponge. This IV sponge, sometimes if my stoma is leaking a lot, I will put this underneath the G-pad, because these actually have a slit in them so that you can fit it around your G-tube. And then I put on a one of these little guys, the G-pad, over the top of that so that it stays extra dry. I also have some sterile cotton tipped applicators. This kind of helps to clean with the hydrogen peroxide or apply first aid cream. And it gets into all the little spots where an actual 2x2 can't get. So this just helps to clean. Let's see. Next. Next, I have some regular syringes for medicine to go through. I also have some 60cc syringes like this, and these hook into the end of my feeding tube to flush it. Because I need to do that every 4 hours, so I try to keep the line clean so that it doesn't clog up. I keep a medical scissors clipped on the edge of my bag, just in case. I keep some baby wipes in my bag so that I can clean up and wipe off anything that I need to wipe off. Now to the big compartments. This little box I keep in here because after I have used the syringe to flush, these syringes are good for 24 hours. So every time you flush, you don't need to get a new syringe. But since I'm always worried about bacteria and germs, I usually put it, after I've used it, I put it in this little case. And I keep alcohol preps in here, just because after I've used this, but before I put it in here, I kind of wipe it down with alcohol preps. The other thing that I keep in this little container are some different medicine syringes, and these are used with the medicine that needs to go through my feeding tube. And this is actually one of them. If I haven't taken my medicines and I need to bring them, I definitely need this. The cap comes off. This pushes down into the top. It's actually a little stopper that pushes down into the top. And then you can tip it over and pull out the amount of medicine that you need, and then it goes straight into the port on my Mickey button, and that makes it very easy to be able to take my medicine. No, I don't have a baby, but yes, this is a powdered baby formula container. It has 3 different separate areas, but what I use this for is I currently do not get enough fiber or protein out of my formula, so right now I have to use extra fiber, and I use 2 scoops. I'm supposed to do it up to 5 times a day. That doesn't always get done, to be honest. But so I just put 2 scoops in every compartment. and this is a lot easier to take with me than this big can. And I also label it. This is the Nutrifiber. And then this is the protein. And this is the bin of protein that I need to put through my feeding tube as well, in order to keep me healthy. The way that I get the protein and fiber into me is I take 2 scoops, which is in these containers. So I'll dump it into a blender bottle, and then I'll mix it with 4 ounces of either distilled or sterile water. You have to use distilled or sterile water in a feeding tube because it can break down the feeding tube if you use tap water. All the minerals and stuff that's in the tap water can actually ruin your feeding tube, and I would need to have surgery to have it replaced. So I mix 2 scoops into this, shake it up, get a syringe, and put it through my feeding tube. And I do that for the protein and for the fiber. Moving into another compartment. I have extra sets that hooks up to my pump and then hooks into my feeding tube extension sets. This is what the tubing that I use with my pump. This is actually a Connect feeding set, and it goes with my Connect pump. I like this pump. It's very small. It's easy to put in its little tiny backpack, and then the formula bag hooks on the other side of the backpack. You throw it on your back and off you go. It's really simple. The other tubing set that I have is if I'm using my Joey pump. This is my Joey pump. I love this pump. This was a gift from some of Jay's family. This pump is not covered by insurance, nor are the bags for it. They're pretty expensive, so I can only use this one sparingly. But I try to use it on the days where I have a hard time getting out of bed, or I'm too sick from my chemo, or I'm so tired that I can't stay awake. Because this pump has 2 bags in here. You'll see a purple and a blue cap in there. The purple is for the feed that I use, and the blue is for water. And this pump will actually, you can program it to feed for an hour and then flush it with water. Feed for an hour and flush it with water, and it runs on its own. So on the days where I'm not feeling good at all, this pump is my saving grace, because I don't have to worry about trying to get up and drink a lot of fluids, because the pump puts fluids through me all by itself. So I love this pump, but I'm almost out of bags for it. A case of bags is pretty expensive, so I have to be very, very, very careful using this pump, even though it's so wonderful. It also has its own backpack, and both the bags hook up inside of the backpack. I can throw it on my shoulder and keep going. I have a hard time staying hydrated. A lot of times I'm dehydrated because I don't drink enough. So if I use this pump a lot, then I need to actually run fluids through my port at nighttime so that I stay hydrated. Unfortunately, my blood pressure drops a lot when I'm dehydrated, and I tend to get dizzy and things like that. Not too long ago, my temperature or my blood pressure was 85 over something. That's really low for me. So I will be running fluids tonight. These little things are so cute, and yes, I have them because they are cute. The little cap fell off of it, but there's a cap that goes on top here. But this, if I'm really, really nauseous and I can't even take any medications, we will put my pills in here, and then you twist this back on, and it crushes your pills down to a powder. Then I can mix that in my little glass and with some distilled water and put it through my feeding tube. That way I don't have to worry about trying to get it down by mouth. This is how I carry my distilled water. I just use this water bottle because if we're gone for a whole day or something like that, I need to have 4 ounces for my fiber, 4 ounces for my protein. I need to do those a couple times a day. Plus I also have to have distilled water to flush my tube on a regular basis during the day. So these are key. Okay, so the backpack that I showed you at the beginning of this video is actually a diaper bag. And I purposely buy diaper bags for a reason. This always comes with, it's normally so that you can lay your baby down. You don't have to lay them on the dirty tables or anything in public. But what I do, a lot of times I have to do my medical stuff when we're out and about. My feeding tube needs constant care. You're always doing something with it numerous hours throughout the day. So I lay this down, wipe it down with a wipe or a Clorox wipe that I throw in my bag. And then I can set all my medical stuff down on here without worrying about a dirty table and all the bacteria that's on it. This way I can stay sanitary and not have to worry about an infection. The next things that I keep in my backpack is, this is actually for a straw in case I have a water bottle with a straw or something. This will clean the inside of it. This actually reaches all the way down in these bottles to clean them. Just in case it's empty. I carry these with me just in case. If we're going overnight somewhere, I probably need to grab a gallon of distilled water, and then I just kind of fill this as I need. But I always wash it out before I put more distilled water in there, so these I need to use. And I tend to be clumsy sometimes when I'm taking off a cap or something like that. A lot of times you need the caps if you have to stop something or flush or do something. You need to put a cap back on the actual feeding tube line so that it doesn't get dirty. So I have made myself, this is actually part of a fishing tackle box, but it holds all the many different caps that I use for my syringe, the little cap that goes on the syringe. I have extra of those. I have extra of the little caps that go on the end of the lines. I have extra of the little medicine port caps, and I actually have some extra scoops for the cans just in case I drop the scoop. That way I don't have to worry about it. I can just throw it away. And lastly, there is a little hidden compartment in the bottom of my backpack. And these are my feed towels. They tend to get formula on them and water and medicine. Feeding tubes are not clean. Anytime I do something, hook or unhook or whatever, I always make sure that I have a towel on my lap. I can't tell you how many times I've had formula all over my pants because I didn't grab a towel. We actually got these towels specifically for my feeding tube because I didn't want towels from home. I just thought that I don't like the idea of my stomach contents on any of the towels that we shower with. So these are specific feed towels. They don't look like anything that we have in the house, so we can actually, I have quite a few of these. Sometimes I go through a couple per day, but I am able to just take the whole basket of the dirty towels and put them in the washer on hot, and I know that they come out really clean then. I don't have to worry about what I get on it or anything. Every once in a while, if you forget to clamp your feeding tube and you open up the top, well, your stomach starts to empty. Everything that's inside of your stomach. To be very blunt, it's the exact same stuff if you got sick and threw up, because it's the same stuff that's in your stomach. So it doesn't smell great. It's disgusting. I try really hard to never forget to clamp these, so I always make sure now. But I have these towels just in case. I've been having a little bit of issues with my feeding tube and things. I follow somebody on YouTube who also has a feeding tube and wanted to know how she takes care of her feeding tube. Because my feeding tube is just starting now to get a little uncomfortable and a little red around it. It's not infected. It may be the start of the granulation tissue, so I just need to get rid of it. But what she used was this. It's made by Medline Remedy. Phytoplex Z-Guard paste. And she uses this to help clear up any issues or redness around her feeding tube. But before you put that on, I use this. It's Medline Skin Integrity, and it's actually a wound cleanser. So it's completely safe if it were to get in around my feeding tube, and it will keep it completely clean, and hopefully I won't have any more issues after using these two new products. I love these products, but insurance doesn't cover them. So unfortunately, I have a lot of medical supplies that insurance doesn't cover. But in order to keep me safe and healthy and not have any infections, we don't have a choice but to buy some things like this. I try to use them sparingly so we don't have to buy them all the time. But yeah, I'm excited. These are pretty neat. So hopefully my feeding tube will clear up. So that is just one of the many, many bags that I take with me when we leave the house. I also have another little backpack with me with this because the little backpack goes on my back. It holds my pump, the bag of formula, and the tubing. I can either use my Connect pump or the Joey pump if I have any bags for it. But like I said, this is just one of the many bags that I take with me. And yeah, that's about it. I hope you all have enjoyed it, and I will be continuing along the road of showing you how I keep up with all my medical procedures that I need to take care of. So it was great to talk to y'all. I hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Take care.